65 buildings, almost 1 million square feet of space, and about 900 tenants in a variety of industries, from hotels to office. We have industrial and flex tenants and properties, residential, storage, and ground leases.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Bill Desjardins. I was the principal in charge for this project. Thanks for joining us today.
I'm Bethany Madsen. I'm principal at Via Architecture, and on this project I was the project manager, and I continued during construction and did the CA for the project.
Hello everybody, I'm Chris Duvall. I'm a principal with Coughlin Porter Lundeen. We're civil and structural engineers in Seattle. On this project we were the structural engineer.
Thank you, panelists. I call these guys our superheroes because without them the project would never get built. So now we will start the video tour where our panelists will act as tour guides, highlighting the project's many features. Please cue the video, Janine.
It all started in 2007 when we began to envision or start looking at how we could thoughtfully transition our suburban development neighborhoods to a much more urban, livable, walkable community. We've been working on activating this neighborhood for the last several years, and with the addition of the apartments on the neighboring property, the new brewery that just became a tenant of ours, and then our 2 hotels, our Hilton Garden Inn and our Homewood Suites, we felt like the time was right to add a little bit of office. It was important for us to bring the outdoors in on this site because the site is bounded by the freeway, a very urban side on one side, and then surrounded by mountains, wetlands, and streams on the other side.
This is a terrific location because it's among a lot of other uses. It's next to a brand new fitness center called Arena Sports, and we're only 15 minutes away from the Issaquah Transit Center where many bus lines will take you all over the region. The other interesting thing is this is the terminus location for Sound Transit 3's light rail system that will eventually bring light rail right down I-90, right in front of Poplar office building, to a station just down the roadway here.
The project is located immediately adjacent to wetlands and Tibbetts Creek, which meant that we had to really respect our temporary erosion, sedimentation, and control measures, our stormwater management systems. This property has about 40 feet of alluvial deposits, which means it's about 40 feet of loose sand and silt that we're standing on. So if you put a building on this site with just conventional foundations, the building's going to settle too much. The other thing is the groundwater table is only about 5 feet down, and during an earthquake, this site would liquefy. So we needed to come up with a different foundation system. And so we worked with Ted Shepper at Terra Associates to come up with a driven grout pile system. We've got about 100 piles that are supporting this building to mitigate any issues with settlement or liquefaction.
You'll notice on the building that we have a lot of glass, and that is designed specifically to allow the people to view through the building and see the mountains beyond. And it needed to really reflect Pacific Northwest architecture and be of a high quality so that we could really set the bar for future developments in Issaquah.
The interesting shape of the property presents interesting planning opportunities. With the trapezoid shape, we started out with an L-shaped building that developed into the feature stair. The trapezoidal building site and angled poplar way frontage significantly influenced the building shape and parking layout as we look to engage the street but maintain the relationship with the surrounding context and buildings. We worked with the landscape architect to make the best use of the negative triangular spaces created by these relationships to integrate the building into the site.
One of the things that we did with the structure is we wanted to hold the structure back from the facade and really reach out with cantilevered slabs to reach out and grab on and support that facade system to basically be able to maximize the amount of area
that the facade has and maximize daylighting into the building. Structural challenge that we were able to overcome, but it's something that I think is fairly unique about the building.
We used a larger format brick, which was more in keeping with the scale of the building. And the brick also has a lot of color variation, which adds interest within a pretty simple material palette. It has a smooth texture, which creates a more modern aesthetic.
Another thing that makes Rowley Properties different is that we're long-term owners. Our business model is not to sell any of our properties. So when we build a building, we often make different choices about the materials that go into the building than many other developers do, because we know we're going to own it for the long term. We want to make sure that it's going to be a great asset that's easy to maintain and very sustainable.
Certainly one thing that makes this building unique is it's the first CLT building in the city of Issaquah. The roof of the building is kind of an optimal place to utilize CLT. It really served a dual purpose in that it accomplished the cantilevered projections, but it also forms the finished appearance on the outside soffits and the interior of the building as well.
It's a hybrid structure. We've got steel, we've got concrete, we've got CLT, and we just really found really great ways to use all of those elements in different areas of the building. And what you see from the outside, you see the timber overhangs on the roof, you see the timber and steel canopies, you see the stair, especially at night when it's all lit up, just accentuating the building from the highway. It just makes it really unique. There's nothing around quite like this one.
We wanted to kind of pave the way for other developers to adopt more use of cross-laminated timber in the future. We're very grateful for the advocacy of Forterra with our officials at the city of Issaquah to help them see the great benefits of sustainability for this material. And we also are extremely appreciative of the support that we received from VIA, Coughlin, Porter, Lundeen, and also from GLY to provide examples of how this material has been used in other jurisdictions.
For this building, we wanted to have an efficient floor plan that could also be divided into individual tenant spaces. We consolidated the core into the central area so that it can service the whole building. We added 10 additional bays for additional corner office opportunities rather than just 5, and this allows for tenants to have that amenity. For the glazing, we used a full-height curtain wall with glazed spandrel panels so that it would be as transparent and uniform as possible. We used an alternating major-minor mullion pattern so that it added interest within the simple material palette.
We really wanted to do these long cantilevered overhangs on the outside of the building and then express the CLT. And so we had some overhangs that were around 9 feet in many areas of the building. So we were looking for a product that could do those cantilevers, even double cantilevers, and then do all the structural work that we needed to do and then act as a structural diaphragm. And so that's what we have in the ceiling here. And it turned out really beautiful. And we were also looking for ways to use that same kind of structure elsewhere in the building. And so we did the same type of thing at the entry canopy, which marks the main entrance into the building, which cantilevers off of this really cool stair structure. And then you walk into this stair and you've got a 5-ply CLT wall here. You've got 3-ply CLT stair treads and then 5-ply CLT stair landings that we've got, and all imitating what you also see when you go up to the 4th floor and you've got exposed steel and CLT up there. So it's just this really cool connection from what you see on the outside all the way up through the building and what you see up on the 4th floor. Let's attract tenants away from the elevator and let's get them out to the stair where you're in this beautiful space. You can smell the wood, you feel the wood, you can experience the inside of the space, you can look out over the view towards Lake Sammamish and use the stair, which is better for your health and wellness. So it's just this really cool feature in the building.
The idea behind the feature stair was that it would be a recognizable icon for the building. The way that it's been detailed and addressed is that it will be lit at night and be a beacon from passersby on I-90.
Some of our other sustainable features that we have in this building are that on our 1st floor, we feature light fixtures that are made from recycled cardboard by a local company here called Gray Pants. We have 3 electric vehicle charging stations that can charge up to 5 cars at a time. We also have bike lockers and showers. One of our focal points is Wedgwood. So this is a buck that my father purchased at a fundraising auction many years ago, and he thought it would look really great in our Tibbetts Creek Greenway, welcoming people. But we discovered that Wedgwood was not graffiti proof. He was not an outdoor buck, he's an indoor buck. And so for the last at least 12 plus years, he's been in our office in our conference room waiting for us to build a building where we could place him. In addition to Wedgwood, we also have a sculpture outside the entry to our office building, greeting people as they come in. And that is an otter. It's a statue by local artist Georgia Gerber. She lives on Whidbey Island, and you will have known her for crafting the pig at the Pike Place Market and the husky dog at Husky Stadium. Near the otter, you'll see his footprints embedded in the sidewalk. And you'll also see footprints of other wildlife in the sidewalk, which was part of our design theory to bring the outdoors in and integrate nature with the built environment by making it seem like animals that might have come out of the wetland and walked across the wet concrete, and you can kind of guess what their footprints are. Then another unique thing we did with this building is we have a time capsule. This is the year 2020, a very unusual year, a year full of change, disruption, and innovation, and it's going to mark a period of time where that we will not be the same from afterwards, a change in civilization. And so it just seemed really fitting, since the construction of our building coincided with that year, to gather mementos of this particular period and place them in a time capsule with a timeline of about 100 years. So 100 years from now, we're hoping that people will open that time capsule and they will know whether we got things right or not.
This project was really fun to work on. We had an awesome team, a really awesome owner. And from the very beginning of the project, the team wanted to brainstorm different ideas of what we could do with this building. We were jumping up and down on the whiteboard, marking up our favorite ideas, working them out to ultimately give you what we have out here now. And we think this building turned out great, but it was really just that collaboration early on that made the project so much fun to work on.
All right, thank you. Thanks for the excellent tour from our panelists. And also thanks to GLY and Rob Mervin for producing that excellent film. There's more to share in our panel discussion, and I'm sure the audience will have questions. But before we dive into that, we're going to split everyone up into a short breakout room session. Now you're saying, why are we doing that? Well, this gives you a chance to chat. Given the state of the world, we don't have much socializing right now. So think of this as if you were walking through the building and meeting other visitors as you go. Some you're going to know, some you're meeting for the first time. Introduce yourselves, talk about what you like on the video, and do some networking for the next 10 minutes. Janine will send you a 60-second warning so you can wrap up any thoughts and formulate questions for us at the end of this 10 minutes. Now, when you're prompted, select join on your screen. Now have fun, and we'll see you back here shortly. All right, I think everyone is back. Welcome back, friends and colleagues. If your group came up with any questions, please put them in the chat where Janine will feed them to our panelists. As you discovered in the breakout session, we have a very diverse group of participants from different industries and professions. And I'd like to give a special welcome to David Craig and his students from the CM 410 class, which is part of the curriculum for the University of Washington's Construction Management Certificate Program. They're studying this project as part of their class, and I think they learned a lot from today's presentation. Okay, folks, now we're gonna spin the wheel. We have a raffle wheel of fortune for 500 big ones. We're going to do this a couple times today, but just to kind of break up the session. The winners don't get to keep the cash, however, but they do get to choose a charity of their own choice, and we'll donate that $500 under their name because it is the season of giving. So put your seatbelts on, folks. Good luck. Spin it, Janine and Melanie. Well,
anything.
congratulations, Coughlin. It's not
Are
fair.
you here?
Yes, she is. She works with us at VIA.
Oh, congrats.
Thank you. I
we should-
never win anything. This is amazing.
Do you have a particular charity in mind, or would you like us to follow up with you after? We're just curious. We're nosy.
I have a few, so I'd like to think about it, if I may. Probably EDF or WWF, but I'd like to just take a minute to think about that, if that's okay.
Wonderful. Thank you.
You've got plenty of time, Coughlin, because Janine will reach out to you after the show and get that information. Now let's get back to our panel to do the Q&A session. First question is for Carrie.
Sorry, this is Janine. I just wanted, if everybody could turn their video off for a little bit so we can have our panelists kind of, thank you, show up on the screen, and that way everybody knows who's talking and they're the focus. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you, Janine. We'll take a minute to let everybody turn off their video.
Or I'll
All
just
right.
do it for you.
Okay, you can do that.
I have the power. Okay, back to you.
Okay, great. Let's start with our first question and answer panelist question. Starting with you, Carrie. Originally, there was a recreational vehicle storage yard here 3 years ago with a cyclone fence around it. Why did Rowley Properties decide to develop here? And how does this fit into your master vision for the Hyla Crossing neighborhood?
Sure, thanks, Matt. So yes, on this site, before we built the 2005 Poplar building, we had 3 different things. We had our RV and boat storage yard that had about 100 spaces. We had a paved parking lot that was overflow parking for the car dealerships. And we had a small retail building that my grandfather had built in 1971 for an equipment rental company that was there for many years. The building morphed into all kinds of different uses over time, but was most recently a used motorcycle dealership. When we completed our most recent construction project, which was the Homewood Suites Hotel, we had been listening to a lot of conversations happening in the community and knew that Issaquah's jobs housing ratio was off. There was a lot of residential, but there just weren't a lot of jobs, and the community was concerned about that. They wanted more jobs, and it had been quite a while since we'd seen a new office product in Issaquah, so the time seemed right to build office. This particular site was chosen because it had such easy access on and off I-90. It has great visibility from a branding standpoint. If there's a whole building tenant that takes it, it's within walking distance to the transit center and several other amenities. And it also didn't have any long-term leases that were holding it up. So speaking of walking distance, walkability is a big part of our vision for Hyla Crossing. And this particular neighborhood, really more than any other in Issaquah, is one of those interesting places where the built and the natural environment are integrated. And this project is a great example of how to be able to do that.
Excellent. And Carrie, it does have great visibility. Didn't you say the top floor tenant gets to put their name on the building somewhere?
That's exactly right, Matt. Not only do they get the cross-laminated timber ceiling, but they also, and incredible views, but they also get their sign on the building.
All right, well, that one's going to go fast. So let's move on to the next question. Rowley Properties has assembled an exceptional and energetic team for this project. Carrie, can you tell us more about those folks and how you know them? And what's the benefit of handpicking your team rather than using an RFP process?
Sure. We did have a fabulous and fun team to work with. And I will say that probably about 75% of the team members were companies and people that we had worked with before on other projects, and we wanted to work with them again. Our 2 largest players were VIA Architects, who had helped us with our master planning that ultimately led to the outcome of a 30-year development agreement that we have with the city of Issaquah to transform this entire neighborhood over time to be much more urban. And VIA really understands our vision and the opportunities that this site really presented to be able to take several steps forward to achieving that vision. Our second largest player was GLY, who we had recently worked with to build our Homewood Suite. And they did a fabulous job on what was a very complicated project. They know us, they have a really good idea of what to expect both from us, but they also know our properties and their kind of unique conditions. They know the city very well and have built strong relationships, and are recognized for their high quality work, as well as making the construction process as smooth as possible, which is what we experienced with the Homewood Suites construction and this building.
Well, excellent. My next question follows right on that answer. GLY was brought in very early in Schematic as part of the design team. What was the benefit of that? We should start with Bill.
Well, yeah, I think everybody's seen the curves that show that, you know, the beginning of a design process, the opportunities to influence cost are quite great, and as the process moves forward, those opportunities start to diminish over time. And so really important to have a team fully assembled that can help you weigh all of the options and help you navigate the myriad of decisions that need to be made so that all of those decisions are well informed.
What do you think, Bethany?
Well, at VIA, we like to work with contractors early on because they can give us some of the cost and constructability feedback when we're still evaluating the big design moves. And that helps us provide the most value to our clients and owners.
I'd also like to just put a shout out to the project managers, Jason Gill at GLY and Eric Svega at Rowley. They were both instrumental, and they really rolled up their sleeves and worked with us at the beginning of this project. So big shout out to you guys. Okay, next question. Bethany, what major decisions did the team make during schematic design that could have seriously impacted the project if they were made later on?
Well, early on, we were looking at the balance of the building size with the parking that would be required, as well as accounting for the critical area setbacks and the unusual shape of the site. So we looked at different building and parking configurations. Some of the early options were a combined building and parking structure. And we also looked at a separate parking structure with adjacent to the building. And with some GLY feedback and taking into account the soils and the high water table, neither of those made a lot of sense. So with that feedback, it helped us determine that a compact building and the surface parking allowed for a pretty significant cost savings of the foundation system, because there just weren't going to need to be as many piles, which are pretty expensive. And with the parking on one side of the building, it also meant that in the future, that area could be redeveloped when there's less parking required in general.
Yeah, and if I can add just a comment on the design of the building overall, you heard in the video how important it was for us to bring the outdoors into the building and connect to nature. And you see that on the exterior design of the building with the glass, and we talked about how you can see into the building. But I'd like to also give a shout out to Gloria Chin at Viz Design. She's a local Issaquah interior designer, and she worked with us to really find that Pacific Northwest look, the look that was right for this building and the connection between the two different extremes. Plus, we also knew that Wedgwood was going to land in this building, and the Wedgwood China pattern doesn't really say Pacific Northwest. And so to be able to integrate Wedgwood into a thoughtful way that harmonizes with the building, I think was quite an impressive feat. And then you can also see, we called it out a little bit earlier, but the recycled cardboard light fixtures that we've got in the building. Gloria worked with us on the design for that, and the ceiling clouds and all of the interiors that draw you through the hallways to the Buck and to the elevator lobby.
Yes, excellent job, Gloria. I really like that lobby and how you've treated everything. Carrie, why did you call the Buck Wedgwood? Where'd that name come from?
Well, if you look closely at the buck and you know anything about Wedgwood china, that is the same pattern as on the Wedgwood china. So he's also kind of a more formal buck than what's usual in the Pacific Northwest.
Oh, I see. I thought it had something to do with the broiler up in Wedgwood, up in North Seattle, but
No.
that's a better story. Okay. Hey, I'm looking at the chat and there's some questions about construction types. So we just happen to have that queued up next. Poplar is built using type 3B construction. That's a building code designation. Can the panelists further explain what that means? Because that's pretty wonky stuff. And what are the benefits of having exposed steel? Let me start with Chris.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it is important to, it's always been important to, when you get on a project, establish what the construction type is going to be. But I feel like ever since we've started to see the resurgence of timber in our structural products, getting the construction type established early on in the project has become, I don't know, it's like found a new importance. And so on this project, we always knew we wanted timber in the building. We knew we wanted it to serve a structural function. And so when we were looking at, you know, the number of stories that we were going to build and the size of the building and trying to figure out how we could do it most economically, we needed to figure out what that construction type was going to be and what it was going to allow us to do. Now we landed on type 3B construction, which is, I think, really important why we're talking about it today. What type 3 construction is it allows you to have combustible materials in the building, fairly good sized square footage building, allows you to have combustible materials inside as long as you have a non-combustible exterior wall. And so we were kind of headed down that road anyway with the construction on this project, and the fact that we knew we had timber. What we really wanted to make work was 3B. And so what that is the 3B carries a 0 rating, and that's really important for the timber. It's important for the steel too, because what it means with that 0 rating is that you don't have to upsize the timber, which is going to cost more money. So you're getting a savings there, and you don't have to fireproof the steel. And the design all along was we really wanted to expose the structure. And so type 3B allowed us to do that. And so I think maybe one of the lessons learned that if you take anything away from this project is, you know, work on establishing your construction type early in design so that you can realize, you know, what you can do. You know, it'll tell you what you're allowed to do with the project. And so we were able to do that with 3B on this one, and it worked to our advantage.
I think to maybe just tag on to what Chris is saying, it's probably been at least a decade since we've constructed a tenant improvement that hasn't wanted to expose some or all of the overhead structure. And well, you look at the photograph on the screen in the lower right corner and just imagine the quality of an overhead experience with the exposed wood like this and the opportunities that creates for a tenant build out. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and from an architectural perspective, when we were looking at the building size and the parking, that balance, a 4-story building was what started to make sense, even though a 5-story would have been allowed per the development agreement. But with that keeping it lower at the 4 stories, it meant that the views to the mountains and the foothills were maintained, and it kept us within that 3B construction type limit of the 4 stories. So this meant that we could keep the steel exposed, and it emphasized the modern industrial aesthetic that we were looking to achieve on this building.
So Carrie, was it hard to convince you to go for this?
No, it really wasn't that hard. The way that we like to approach design is when we have a vision in mind for the type of building that we're looking for, we'll have objectives that we define. And what we did was we gathered photos of other buildings that we really liked that seemed to essentially showcase what it was we were looking for. And we shared those photos with VIA. And it was VIA that was the one that came back to us and proposed cross-laminated timber for this building for multiple reasons. Of course, it has a warmth, and we really wanted this building to be warm and inviting, especially because it is set at the gateway to Issaquah. And so we wanted it to be really distinctive and welcome people. There is a tremendous, of course, sustainability aspect with cross-laminated timber that I think is extremely exciting for construction in the future, particularly in this area. For us, it wasn't a matter of savings because there was no savings from using cross-laminated timber. In fact, it was probably more expensive than traditional building materials. And that was because at the time we started designing this building, there were no suppliers in the state of Washington. There were a lot of people that were in line to purchase cross-laminated timber. And so our particular product, I think, came out of Montana. But we wanted to make sure that we didn't, that we could showcase a new material that has a lot of potential in this region. And so that's why we went with cross-laminated timber as the perfect thing for this building.
Yeah, I think I'll just add on a little bit to that. Early on, we looked at everything. I mean, we looked at, an all steel building, we looked at an all mass timber building, and then just all the variations in between. And, what was great about the team is that we were able to just map out all the goals for the project, like Carrie just talked about. And when you put all those things together and you make all those considerations, in a collaborative environment, you're able to really pull together something beautiful. And I think that's what we were able to do on this project. We got through all of sort of the mundane, code requirements and construction types and things like that. And we're able to work with the city to put it all together in the way that is shown in these photographs. And so I think, using these new tools that we've got with CLT and others, is enabling us to do new things is pretty spectacular.
Yeah, and I'll add that when we decided to use CLT on the project, we wanted to be sure that it was expressed as a design feature because it's relatively new in the industry and it would be the first building in Issaquah to use CLT. And also it pays homage to the timber heritage of the area. So in order to do that, we really took advantage of the spanning properties to create those large overhangs at the roof and that really dramatic eyebrow. So we use this CLT to facilitate that inside-outside connection, both at the roof and at the stair. And at the stair, we originally looked at more of a traditional framed wall with like a Prodema panel cladding, but we were concerned that it wouldn't really ever match. The different materials would never really look the same. So we worked with the Woodworks Council pretty closely, and they were able to provide us some of the testing data that verified that CLT can serve as the 2-hour fire barrier. And once we had that information, then it just made a lot of sense to feature the CLT on that wall and incorporate it into the stair treads and the landings.
So getting that stairway out of the core left a lot more room inside the building for tenant spaces and then expressed it on the outside of the building. Was there a benefit in the schedule to using CLT?
I mean, there definitely can be. It depends on what you're comparing it with, I think. But, all mass timber. So I think when I think of mass timber, I think of prefabricated wood components and heavy timber components. But the key is that they're prefabricated. That's the difference between what we're doing with timber nowadays than, what we did for timber for 100 years. When it's prefabricated, it can be installed quickly. So these new products that are panelized offsite, they're pre-cut, customized, ready for the project, along with the glulam beams and columns, if you're going to have those in your project. All of that stuff is being prefabricated and precision cut in the manufacturer's facilities or in a fabricator's facility, and then being shipped to the site, ready to be installed. And we've all witnessed the the install of mass timber on this project. We've seen it on other projects as well. And we know how well it goes. So if you're comparing prefabricated mass timber to say like, concrete construction where it's all cast in place on site, you can see a schedule savings because the prefabricated pieces are going to go together quicker. If you're comparing it to structural steel that's also prefabricated, like what we had on this site, maybe it's a wash. But every project's a little bit different, and so you just have to work with your general contractor and your installers to sort of figure out if you're going to get a schedule savings. But certainly there can be a schedule savings with mass timber.
Sure. So Bill, what advice do you have about working with the manufacturers and suppliers of CLT?
Yeah, well, one thing I would say is I think the industry in general has been really good with this emerging technology in terms of just sharing ideas and best practices. So you don't have to start from scratch. There's a wealth of information out there. I think a couple things that we learned in the process with our project is just ensuring that the lumber species and lumber grade and finished appearance of the material is well thought through at the beginning. We did want a Doug fir exposed finish for our panels. The manufacturer first attempted to make the composition of the entirety of the panels out of Doug fir, but was running into some challenges with adhesives and passing some of the testing criteria. So they actually changed the blend of materials, so just the exposed ply was Doug fir and used some other species on the non-visible faces, which worked. We were introduced pretty early on by Coughlin, Porter, Lundeen to Structure Craft, who actually manufactures DLT, which is a different mass timber product, but a really knowledgeable group and very helpful with costs. They not only understand mass timber costs, but they really understand steel costs as well. And I think they were very open and transparent about the affordability of CLT on this project and how it might be used best for us. And then lastly, I guess I'd say, Woodworks was really helpful for us just on the construction side when we thought through the manufacturing, packaging the material to have it shipped, and how it was managed at the job site and ultimately installed to avoid kind of moisture issues and protect the product while it was being installed.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Hey, we're looking at that irresistible stare.
Oh, wait,
Bethany?
Matt, can I chime in for a sec? There's a lot of questions coming into the feed that I'm thinking we are running out of time, and I think it'd be great to get to some of these because a lot of them are related to CLT. The first one is someone asked Aaron asked, the partnership with the city, you mentioned it in the video. Can you share how the entitlement went and what the biggest challenge was with permitting the CLT structure?
Who wants that one?
I can talk a little bit about working with the city on the CLT permit. Cross-laminated timber is in the building code, but it's really there. It's in there in the construction types that we talked about a little bit earlier, different construction types, but it's really there and codified for heights and areas of buildings and not so much for seismic. And we sort of said this in the video, but we definitely wanted to use we wanted to use CLT for all of its structural capabilities, including seismic. And so working with the city, and the city of Issaquah is no different than a lot of other jurisdictions where these are new products and new systems being used in new ways. They weren't totally familiar with it. So what we what we did and what we advocate is to start working with them early to introduce the products to them so that they can get up to speed. I mean, the last thing you want to do is surprise them with something brand new that isn't in the code, pre-approved, and then, you know, submit it all at once, and it's a big surprise to them. So, you know, what we did on this project is we started talking to them about this, let them know what we were doing, show them the testing, and being really forthcoming in all of our engineering so that they understood how it worked. And, you know, there's an education period there, but eventually they understood, and we were able to get our permit. It's never as easy as, you know, going into a jurisdiction with something that they've seen 100 times before. So there's always going to be a little bit more dialogue and a little bit more time invested, but eventually we got there and it worked fine.
Yeah, and I'll just add that the Woodworks Council was really helpful as well with some of that testing and data that proves that the material can perform. So some of those industry resources are really helpful.
And you know, this is a manufactured, pre-engineered product, which most of the time, you know, by that definition would be a deferred submittal in most jurisdictions. In this case, the supplier provided all of that engineering up front, and that was included as a part of the building permit set. So, you know, be mindful of that and be aware of what your jurisdiction will need to manage the process accordingly.
So Bill, you're talking about the shop drawings, right?
The shop drawings.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this question came from Aaron Dunson at CBRE, and the first part of the question was regarding how the entitlement went with the city. So let's ask that question. In this location, what were the city of Issaquah's priorities? Bethany?
Yeah, so on this site, the goals of the city of Issaquah and the Rowleys is to add density and begin to urbanize the area. So to achieve this, we added parking on Poplar Street and reconfigured the street profile to make it more of an urban section. And we pulled the building forward to provide a stronger frontage. And we screened the parking as much as possible for that more urban pedestrian experience. And on this site, as mentioned before, the soils don't provide a lot of infiltration, and the water table is pretty high, and the site is quite flat. So a shout out to KPFF for the civil design solutions that were able to address the city's stormwater concerns.
And a shout out to Brumbaugh for working with us on the landscaping, because not a lot of plants will grow with wet feet. So that was a special consideration. And we also, when we design these buildings, we always like to think of the different fall colors. And so selecting trees that are going to be catching your attention kind of throughout the year as they put on in sort of a different show. And because we're long-term owners, I mentioned this earlier, we probably make decisions that not a lot of other developers would necessarily do. And in this particular building, besides having spaces that are easily divisible down to 1,000 square feet on the floor plans, we've also installed some extra things at the ground level to allow this building to change as the community's needs change. So there is a grease trap on the ground floor for the ability for a food tenant to potentially go in there, or a coffee tenant or something like that. We also stubbed out plumbing to some of the spaces on the first floor, anticipating that maybe not now, but at some point in time, there could very well be a daycare on the ground floor of that building, because we generally know that our region is underserved in daycare. And so with the apartments nearby, I mean, how cool it would be to have the ability to live in the area, work, and be able to have your kids nearby too. So those are some of the considerations that we built in to make it timeless.
So anticipating a very mixed use environment out here, eventually, this is just the first of many urbanizing structures that will complete the city's vision in the central Issaquah design guidelines and development standards.
Exactly.
So I just can't stop looking at that irresistible stare, Bethany. What's the story behind that thing?
Yeah, so we have to give a little bit of credit to the Bullitt Center, who was one of the first buildings to incorporate that idea of an irresistible stair to encourage people to take the stairs and not go directly to the elevator. And on this project, the stair was probably the most complicated and the most fun aspect because we were able to do so many things with it. First and foremost, we wanted it to be beautiful. We really wanted it to be a draw for users of the building and also an identifier for the building for people who would have seen it when they were passing by on I-90. And secondly, we wanted it to serve as an exit stair. So we didn't want it to be superfluous, having two exit stairs internally and that one on the outside. So we worked really, really hard to be able to meet all of the code and the life safety requirements to keep that as an exit stair. And then for the building users, it can be an impromptu meeting space, you know, for some of those casual conversations between colleagues that are so helpful for businesses these days. And it's interesting because all of these decisions, they were made before COVID hit, but now that we're in the situation that we're in, you can really see how there's an asset for this type of feature on a building for the option for people to circulate without going directly into an enclosed space like an elevator.
And not only, so that with the vertical circulation, the stairs are wide enough that you can actually have traffic going both directions and still maintain your social distancing. So that's pretty cool. And then you can't see it in the picture, but we believe that a great project has elements of surprise and delight that are essentially baked into the project. And with this staircase, we have another one, and it's the lighting in the staircase. We have the ability to change colors so that we can celebrate holidays or sports teams and make the building more interactive to be able to engage with the neighborhood.
Okay, I think it's time to spin that raffle wheel.
Oh, okay.
Should we do that right now? Can you do that, Melanie? Janine?
Go for it, Melanie.
I'm ready if you are.
And then we'll get to a couple more questions.
Sounds good. Here we go.
Do we have a Jason? Hello.
Yeah, take it off on mute. Yes, we do. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah, on the first spin, I was just wondering, boy, if my name came up, who in the world would I like my contribution to go to? And actually, there's several that we contribute to, and I'd love to give it some thought and follow back up with you if that's all right.
Sure, that's great.
Yeah,
Very
well, thank
good. Yeah,
you very
good.
much.
Yeah, that's we'll get back to you, and you'll be contacted by Janine or Melanie. Okay.
We'll do one more at the very end, but I don't know, Matt, if you can read the questions in the chat, or do you want me to read a few of them?
Well, there was a question in there about the CLT and what you can attach to it in terms of mechanical, electrical. Is that one we want to take on?
Yeah, there's actually a couple. There's that one, and then to add on to that, there's also start with that one.
Yeah.
Well, from a structural perspective, you know, it's going to be similar to, say, like metal deck, where you can screw, you know, attachments for any sort of utility. As long as it's relatively lightweight, it shouldn't be a problem. You know, if you're trying to hang, you know, mechanical units or things like that from the underside, we might get a little bit concerned. But if it's multiple pipe runs or ducts or anything like that, and you've got, you know, a 5-ply CLT like what we have on 2005 Poplar, then you're not going to get a whole lot of eyebrow raising from the structural engineer. So, you know, if you're thinking of just utilities and things like that, it's not that big of a deal. It's obviously something that we always want to look into and know about it when it's happening. But it's not a concern. I mean, CLT is a very strong material. Is that answering your question? I hope. There's more concerns with penetrations, you know, from a fire protection point of view. But just in terms of, you know, lightweight MEP systems being screwed to the underside, certainly you can do that.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Another question was there an exterior lighting design consultant? Who was our subcontractor on that, Bill?
So Prime Electric was our design build electrical. Kaufman Engineers did the electrical design. Yeah.
Any more questions, Janine, from the?
Yeah, there was one about the, actually lead did come up. What is the lead rating, and were there any particular challenges navigating the process with CLT, given its potential unfamiliarity to many?
Well, I guess I'll start off with this one. We have navigated the LEED process. We built a LEED Gold certified office building before. It's our John L. Scott office building on SR 900 in the same neighborhood. And we learned a lot through that process. And as we've done subsequent projects, we've incorporated the things that we've learned and made sure that we did additional innovation and added that into our projects, but we haven't actually pursued LEED certification for this yet. We may have some tenant improvements that are interested in doing that, but there are many components of how we built this that reflect principles of LEED. Does anyone else want to add in on that?
I would just echo what you said. We didn't pursue LEED, but we incorporated the concepts into the specs and the material selection, and so I think there are, you know, just sustainability measures that we took without pursuing LEED.
Yeah. In our development agreement, the city of Issaquah essentially is looking to us, and the city does look to us to be leaders in sustainability. And that was part of why we really wanted to pioneer the use of cross-laminated timber in the area. And now, fortunately, there's a cross-laminated timber plant in the state of Washington. So the material will become easier to get, and you're certainly going to see it around a lot more, I think.
Not to mention the incredible amount of restoration you've done to Tibbetts Creek and the wetlands around you, and putting over 300 employees within this building, within walking distance of an urban center. All good points in location as well. Hey, I'm looking at the questions and seeing Edwin Mirsky Real Estate saying, will this recording be available? I have so many prospective tenants to show this presentation to.
I believe it will, right?
Yes, it will. Yeah. We will send a follow-up email answering questions that didn't get asked on the chat here, and then also we'll have a link to the video and the recording if you'd like. And yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think I saw a comment somewhere in there about the HVAC system as it relates.
Yes, I was just about to bring that up. Someone asked, can you speak to the ventilation system? Was there any thought given to office air quality given COVID-19?
Yeah. Bill, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, well, and probably first and foremost, it's probably worth mentioning, like many projects that are, you know, under construction or just completing in the Puget Sound area. COVID wasn't a thing when we started, and it happened in the middle of the project. So, you know, I can only imagine that the industry, and I know this to be true, is really grappling with this and what it means for our future and the future designs of facilities. This building's heated and cooled with a VRF system. So we've got a hydronic heating and cooling system, and we do have dedicated outside air systems as well. So as far as I know, that is about the best that you could hope for in today's age as it relates to, managing the COVID environment.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I was going to say we thought about having operable windows, but being up against I-90 just made that super challenging because it's so noisy.
yeah, and so the stair is also outside of the building envelope, which had a couple of benefits because we could keep it fully enclosed in glass, but it also meant that we could passively ventilate it. So there's louvers on the outside, and there's a fan at the roof level to get some chimney effect. And so there's outside air coming in through that stair.
And Gloria has mentioned in the chat as well that a lot of the interior finish materials and furniture fabrics are compatible with CDC improved disinfectants.
Okay, we're just about out of time, and I think we need to spin that raffle wheel one more time before we close. Melanie, if you will.
All right, everybody cross your fingers and toes or whatever you need to do for luck, and we'll do one last spin.
And while she's doing that, we'll be sure to follow up and answer any remaining questions after the event via email and answer those questions since we didn't have time to get to all of them. The wheel is coming. I'm getting goosebumps.
Mel, I don't think it's shared. There we go.
There we go.
Hey,
Do we have a Kyle? Can't win if you're not here.
We're spinning again.
Oh, it likes the cave. Kathleen. Is she here
your
still?
mom?
I don't know that she's on video, but
Is she on voice? Mom.
You might just have to, that might be one that wins regardless of whether she's present or not.
Yeah.
that's fine.
That sounds like a good plan to me. Congrats, Kathleen.
Okay.
Let's do one more. What the heck? Is that okay, Bill?
One
Yeah.
more.
Yeah, let's do it.
Here we go. One more. It's too fun.
If it goes straight to the K's, we know there's something wrong with this thing. Marty. We're going to have to do it until somebody wins.
Big shout out to Marty at KPFF, our civil engineer.
Yvonne.
I think people's odds are getting better by the minute.
I know. We still have 75 people here, so we know someone's going to win. Yeah, I want to find a winner that's here. Scott Nelson. David, are you here? All right, let's try one more time and then. Aaron. He was here.
He was. He asked a question earlier, didn't
Yeah.
You answered it and then you left.
Okay.
Funny story. Dana Warren is a consultant.
Doug is here. I see him.
Congratulations, Doug.
Yes, I'm here.
All right, we have a winner.
I'm glad. Wonderful.
Wait, let's unmute him.
I am willing to make a decision here and now.
Oh,
So,
good.
one of, I believe, the charities that's near and dear to the Rowleys is the Eastside Baby Corner. And so that's where I'd like it to go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yay, I concur. Great choice. Thanks, Doug. Thanks for being here.
Welcome. It was a great presentation.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. Well, we're a bit over time. That wheel went a little longer than I thought it would. So Matt, did you want to just wrap it up and we'll let everybody go?
Well, congratulations, Doug, and good to see you. In closing, I'll just say we'd like to thank all the design consultants, subcontractors, vendors, suppliers, the many city staff in the various departments, our panelists, their firms, the whole team involved in this project that brought it to a successful completion. And of course, thank you to Rowley Properties for their vision and investment in Issaquah. Cheers to you all. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and we hope that you learned something new and met someone new today. And we look forward to someday seeing you live and in person at the Poplar building, hopefully this spring. Have a great day and be safe out there. Have a good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.